This episode of the podcast is brought to you by LeafWell. Hello, listeners of Cannabinoid Connect. Have you ever thought about getting a medical cannabis card? The process can be intimidating and difficult to navigate, to say the least. That's why I've partnered with LeafWell, the easiest and most affordable way to get a medical card in Texas and in 32 other states in the US. LeafWell seamlessly connects you to a network of doctors that will help you get certified online in minutes. LeafWell is run by data scientists, cannabis specialists, and patient advocates that are passionate about increasing access and education around medical cannabis use. LeafWell's patient support team is also there to support you throughout your entire journey using medical cannabis. As I mentioned, I've partnered with LeafWell to provide all my listeners with a discount to become certified for medical cannabis. Simply go to their website at leafwell.com and use the promo code CCTX to receive $15 off the price of getting a medical card. Again, that's leafwell.com. Use the promo code CCTX to receive $15 off the price of getting a medical cannabis card. LeafWell only charges if you get approved. So what do you have to lose? Visit leafwell.com today. Use the promo code CCTX to get certified for medical cannabis, risk-free. You already know me.
I see that there's like an annoying light across my screen. Are you seeing that? I hope you're not seeing that.
No, it is so good to see you. Annoying light or not, it's been too long.
Annoying light or not, it's good to be seen. It's great to see you, Kevin. I know that you're having a busy year, as I imagine all of us are in some way or another, but you've got a lot of good stuff, so I'm happy for you.
Thank you. Yeah, exactly. As we all do, life continues. In my case, it's been like, life moves with an actual move itself, and then a baby on the way. I actually just finished building a crib this morning, so.
Oh, Papa to be.
I know.
That's fun
Yes.
stuff. That's really fun stuff. Well,
So
my baby is getting older, so it's nice to talk to somebody at the beginning of the process. It's like all that fun anticipation.
wait, is she a teen at this point, or
20, Kevin. She's 20. She just left her teens in August. Yeah. It's crazy.
Wow.
It's crazy. I'm
Wow.
telling you, life is, in the words of Ferris Bueller, life comes at you pretty fast.
That's what I mean. I've kind of experienced it without a kid, but I've heard with a kid, it's just like the months just fall off the calendar. But her being 20, I've heard that's also like the fun process now, because she's an adult. You got like kind of that friend vibes now, where you get to know each other in a different capacity.
It is. I would agree with that very much. Yeah, you still need to parent, which I think people forget. At least when I was like having a young kid, I was like, 18 years, baby. But it's lifelong.
Yeah, that never goes away, I bet. And that's
Doesn't
just like
go
an
away.
eternal instinct. You just always want to look out for your cubs and make sure they're doing what's best for themselves and the family, right?
Yeah, and I'll tell you something that is fantastic, aside from being more friends with them because it's less disciplining and they're more adults in the world. It's nice to see kind of like all this time you've been raising your kid and you get to see them out in the world, like being a independent human adult, and like, hopefully you did a good job and you can be proud of that. And that's there's few things that are on parallel with that feeling, I would imagine.
Yeah, see, I'm excited. These are all new experiences and learnings that I'm about to encounter. I kind of just view it as entering a new dimension. My wife and I were talking, we're like, you realize like this baby's born, it's going to be all different, right? We're going to be go, go, go. And I would imagine ourselves are even going to change quite a bit.
I would imagine.
Which we naturally do. So
Anyway,
yeah. How are you, Rena? Tell me what's going on in your world. It's been, like I said, way too long.
It's been a minute. Yeah. I'm also excited for you to be able to use all these like birth and pregnancy metaphors for the cannabis industry, which I feel like it's rife to have those like metaphors and comparisons. Life over here is good. Also, really busy, filled with change. You have like bringing life. I've experienced some loss this year, which has been tough. Like my dad died at the beginning of the year. I've also had a couple moves. A lot of like, I think loss surrounding me. I've been experiencing that and processing that. I think with so much of the world, I know a lot of like people close to me are also experiencing that. And also professionally, there's been a lot of change, not for me per se, like in my job, but more so just kind of like what's happening in the markets and kind of paying attention to what a difficult period this is. And I think anybody that's part of the business world, like rising interest rates and the market doing terrible for a prolonged period of time, like it doesn't kind of matter where you're at in the business world. I think it's affecting you in some way or another. Honestly, if a citizen of the world, I would imagine, not just the business world, it's affecting you in one way or another. Um, so yeah, I would say this year, like as we're getting to the end of the year, right? Thanksgiving, taking stock, all of that stuff. I will say something that I'm really excited about, and this could be like a good segue to like get into the thick of it. You know, something that I lost my dad, so I spent a lot of time with my mom this summer in California, and one of the things that was great about that was she lives in Palm Springs, and we got to do a lot of cannabis stuff together, and just kind of like experiencing cannabis as we're processing like our grief and moving on and all of that stuff was really a great experience for my mom and I. And then like for the past few Septembers, COVID notwithstanding, I've been going to see these shows at Red Rocks in Colorado. And I've been thinking about it a lot because Colorado just made psilocybin legal, which I think is awesome. And I had some experience with psilocybin there, and also just kind of like talking to people that are affiliated with psychedelics in general, and just also really thinking about psychedelics and cannabis and the mental health aspect of like what's being brought into the world, and just kind of like destigmatizing so much. I think we have a far way to go, but destigmatizing so much. And I think some of the changes like in my life also, I feel like are going hand in hand with things I'm thinking about professionally, just in terms of like opening up our minds and thinking about our lives a little bit differently, and changes and moving on and transitions, and really recognizing that like chapters are really a part of life. And also you know, if I may be crass, also investing, you know, it's not like, I don't know about you, but when I first, this is a long answer. You tell me to stop
No,
talking.
this is great because you're laying the foundation for all the topics that we're going to cover on this episode. So it's
Okay,
perfect.
good.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
good. I was gonna say, like when I first started podcasting, you know, I was obviously like so bullish on the industry, and like people were telling me, I was just kind of like taking it all in, and then you like understand how to parse out that information. But honestly, like when Biden got elected and there was all the like euphoria in the market, I did kind of think that was it. I kind of think we hit it and like, okay, let's go. And
Right.
clearly that was not what happened. So yeah, just kind of like learning about chapters and movements and ebbs and flows, and recognizing that that's a part of everything, even if you're bullish on something, even if you don't see, you know, a reason to be bearish. Nothing goes up forever, nothing goes down forever, you know.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Yeah, I mean, everything that you're saying is on point with kind of what I've experienced or kind of how I've seen things play out. And I want to start first with your mom and that whole experiencing cannabis together, right? I mean, I don't know, did you guys do that prior, or is this something new based on like the grievance period like you mentioned with your father and some of the other losses that you've experienced this year?
Yeah, it's interesting. Like my family has a really strong relationship with cannabis, but it's kind of manifested itself in different ways. I think I've mentioned it before, like we're like the herbal Sherbills. Like
Right.
my whole family pretty much loves cannabis. My parents love cannabis. They were hippies. They, you know, my mom to a degree still is like very much of that mentality was very much a part of that culture, like in the 60s and 70s. And so I grew, but growing up, I would say not until I was like in high school did I know that my dad smoked, even though I kind of assumed it. But still, it wasn't really until I was in my 20s, I guess, and like late 20s, until I was really able to have like an open conversation with my parents. And I would say, even though they were coming from like that hippie 60s, 70s perspective, they also have like a conservative bent. And I think it was really hard for them to kind of, what's the word, like bridge the gap between kind of like how they felt personally about something and what they wanted their kids to be doing.
Right, right.
And I think as parents we're developing that understanding of like how to be parents, how to protect your kids, how to guide them, but also understanding, you know, all of those things I think take generations of work. So to answer your question, I knew that my mom smoked for probably the past like 15 or so years, but haven't like consumed any with her, I would say, until like 6 years ago.
Got you. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, and I bet when you first did that 6 years ago, it was a different lens to bond with your parents, right? With your mom.
Yeah.
At
Yeah.
least I know I've experienced that, and it's beautiful in a lot of ways because you talk about certain topics or have different discussions on a deeper, kind of more intimate level, I would say, where the shields are down, the guards are down, right? You've both
Totally.
consumed, and there's this open kind of free thinking period. And I don't know, I've with my parents, it's been so ebb and flow. You talk about ebb and flows because my dad worked for the federal government for 35 years, but before he did, so obviously he didn't consume then, but before that, he did consume a lot, like in high school and into college, and he stopped because of my mom, because at the time she just grew up in a very religious household, the Nancy Reagan kind of era. Of course, she was born before that, but Dare and just the stigma around cannabis. So he stopped for that period of time while he was in working for the government. And in high school, I kind of got in tune with it, and I saw the benefits, especially from my athletic background. And at first it was like get out of the house if when I came from college and had it, and it's like not in my house, to where it has become like my mom. I love her so much because of how open thinking she is, and how so she now encourages my father to go out and consume, if he's on edge or if he's kind of feeling anxiety or what have you. And so they're really seeing it now for a therapeutic, medically beneficial standpoint, especially with my grandmother who did a pass this year also, of dementia. So it's just beautiful to see this whole journey of where they've come. And like now to this point, my dad and I are, you know, dispensary shopping in New Mexico and just trying different products. It's a beautiful thing, and I just can't wait till the rest of the country and even the world starts, jumping on board with that.
It's so awesome. How's it going with your business? How has that been with like your family and introducing that? Have they been totally on board?
Well, that's the other beautiful thing, right? So my cousin, who I grew up with, he's 2 years older than me. We wrestled on the same state championship high school. Shout out to John Sanchez. He was actually a two-time state champion himself. He's a second cousin of mine, and he launched a brand, and he brought me in as a partner. It's called Espiritu, and intentional cannabis is really what the brand's about, and just being, conscious about why you're doing it and what the purpose is. But outside of all that, it was so awesome because we had a launch party in Rio Doce, New Mexico, 2 weeks ago, and my dad and he went with me. Like we tried the product together. So to answer your question, they're so accepting of it. They're so supportive of it, just because they've broken past that barrier of the stigma. They have the understanding, and especially with a son who has a podcast like this, who's continually disseminating, education with experts who are on. They see the legitimacy in that point. If I were just smoking on the podcast and getting high and talking, just whatever, I think they might have a
Right.
different viewpoint. So it's been good. It's been great, and I'm just blessed to be a part of it. So
Totally. Totally.
yeah.
The other thing I really like about like bringing parents into it and like smoking or consuming it, however you consume it with them, is also, I think this, at least for me, like there was so much kind of like, there was a lot of lying around cannabis when I was younger with my parents, and like just not wanting to get in trouble, I would assume. But like that also then extends itself to feeling a certain kind of shame around consuming cannabis, which I think bled into my parenting, how, and that took me a while to work out in my own head also, like how I talk to my child about cannabis. But when I'm consuming with my mom, and I also really appreciate about my mom, like what you said about your mom, is that she is continuously evolving. And, I really, really appreciate that. And shout out to any parent, just keep on evolving. I think that's the trick.
Right.
Um, but I think it allows us to be like, yeah, I consume cannabis, you consume cannabis, we're adults, we're people, like seeing each other kind of like still as my mom, but also like as a human being. And that feels just really honest, and that's, I think, just a better way to be.
Yeah. I mean, I think we've both said this on prior episodes where you've been on, and we talked about how there's really no bullshit with like a true cannabis consumer, they kind of can read the bullshit, I think, at a heightened more level than the average person who maybe doesn't, right? And I'm not saying that is blanket for everyone, but when you
But it's a
consume,
stereotype we can get behind.
yeah, it's exactly, we can step behind a stereotype, and it's beautiful. And speaking of that, I think this is a good transition, because another thing you talked about was how you're going to you've been going to various shows at Red Rock. So when you say shows, are those the EDM shows with
No, not at all.
no?
It's
Okay.
like bluegrass. It's like bluegrass. I actually saw fish shows for the first time. My friends are really into fish and they've been going for
Nice.
years. And they've
Yeah.
been trying to get me there for years. So I did my first fish show. But other than that, it's bluegrass. It's this band called Green Sky Bluegrass that I really, really love. Yeah, that's the music.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, I guess I just went ahead and assumed EDM, because you mentioned you go over there, and obviously, Colorado did they legalize psilocybin, or is it decriminalized?
No, it was decriminalized. They just legalized it.
They just legalized.
Yeah.
Okay, I want to make sure I got that right. So
Yeah.
that makes sense then, because it's more prevalent, right? Like even at a bluegrass concert or show at Red Rock. So I mean, are you encountering people that are
I mean, I wasn't actually taking them at the show. For me, it was like a different experience than that.
okay?
And I mean, there are plenty of people taking it at the show, but for me, it was also just like being in Colorado. Like that was the reason I was there, but it was just like being in that environment and kind of being able to experience like, um, honestly, like a really, whatever, I'm sure there's plenty of places, plenty of counties that wouldn't be like this, but I just experienced a lot of like radical openness, to kind of like what those things can do for you. Honestly, both recreationally and from like a mental health perspective. But like ultimately, I would say even like in a recreational way, it's probably mostly mental health. You know what I mean? Like it's
Yeah.
like decompressing, decharging. Like the world is freaking crazy. Um, it's just like a nice way to unplug
And it
and reset and recharge. And like I've been doing just like a lot of reading and researching about it and just like and listening to a lot of podcasts about it, just like what psychedelics are doing for your brain. It's just like pretty freaking cool.
it's crazy, right? And I mean, anyone who's had a psychedelic experience, I think, can attest to this, where you feel like you're being removed from all of your, and I know this is going to sound crazy, like feelings, well, not feelings, because you have a lot of feelings, but like your thoughts about whatever worry it is, the ego part. So like, I feel this way, or this is bothering me, or I don't like that person, I don't like that thing. It kind of removes those thoughts and emotions, because you understand at some point that we're all, like, everything around us that is living, like whether it be animals or us or grass or trees, like there is this collective livingness that's happening, right? And so it's bigger than us. And so you kind of start to laugh at yourself. At least I do in some experiences, where it's like, that stuff doesn't matter that I'm worried about day to day. I mean, you want to be the best human being, you want to try your best, and all that. But all the other stuff, the little man or woman inside your head that just kind of is always negating and trying to get you off course, that's the trickery. That's what's happening every day. And
Yeah.
psilocybin, and I think to your point, psychedelics, it really helps kind of you think about those things in ways that you wouldn't be able to or didn't think of prior.
Totally. I would also add something for me, and it lasts like a long time after, is like this certain calmness and also like an ability to integrate what I took from like whatever I was experiencing, or like I feel like after taking psilocybin, there's like typically I've had really emotional, non-insightful experiences also, but recently I feel like I've had like some really bright insights, and I'm able to kind of like take that with me after in a way that like I integrate into real life, like not just like, oh my God, the sky and nature, but like really practical ways of integrating it. And there's like just a really deep sense of calmness about it. Um, and I also wanted to mention like something, and I wonder if you feel this, is I feel like there's something, and this is something I'm also trying to like delve deeply into, but I feel like there's a really strong connection specifically with psilocybin and cannabis. They're both like plant-based. They're both like, of psychedelics, I think psilocybin is the least kind of like Oh my God, I'm going to be seeing a phone turn into a snake in 10 years, type of thing. Um, yeah, I don't know. There's something that, and I feel like also at least what it does for me and what I've heard it from other people as well, so they really complement each other, I think, like really nicely. I don't know if you have thoughts about that or have experienced that.
Yeah, I agree. I think both cannabis and psychedelics, they allow you to experience your own consciousness, right?
Hmm.
Whether that be through being high if you consume cannabis, or if you're on a trip, or if you're microdosing. Um, what's interesting about the two, to your point, is that, like, how it goes back earlier of kind of looking through the veil, like the transparency is there with both. One is just a bit more heightened, or I don't want to, I mean, more intense it can be than the other, but I mean, there was one time where I microdosed, and I was playing a video game. I was playing Call of Duty as it was like setting in, right? And I gotta tell you, Rena, I have never been so sharp in terms of, like, I mean, I could, because I had the headphones on, so I could like hear the footsteps over here. Boom, boom, got you. Over here. Boom. Like I was anticipating all the
Right.
moves, and I'm not that good. It was just that time, and I just couldn't believe what it was doing to my brain in terms of being self-aware, heightened listening of what sounds I'm hearing around me, to then be proactive to take action. It was pretty wild.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's a real like tapping in. It's like hearing things, getting things, like, yeah.
Right, right. I mean, and in some ways, that's why I get frustrated of how, psilocybin and cannabis are stuck in that Schedule 1 listing, you know, uh, equivalent to meth, heroin, all the really man-made, chemically induced, physically addictive drugs. And there's a lot of promise that we're learning, especially within psychedelics. It's going the pharmaceutical route, it's going the medical therapeutic route, and that listing just needs to change, and it can't be rescheduled. I'll say it again. It has to be descheduled. It has to be completely removed. Both substances, to really see us start to leverage this plant and these plants and move the needle in these areas.
Amen, Selah. Yes, yes, yes. Preach it. What are
I
you
mean,
hearing like on the legal side? Like, how are you feeling like things are going to progress?
uh, it's I don't know. I really, that's a great question, because I say I don't know, because the presidential election in 2024 is going to be huge, right? And now that the Republicans have the House, it's going to be whichever party leans on cannabis. Like, we all know it's bipartisan. We know that there's tons of public support for this plant, whether it's medicinally available or recreation. So, in my view, it's just whoever moves on it and actually, like, leans in hard and goes all out with it. And right now, either party hasn't. Biden's, virtue signaling of releasing people from prison. I don't even think, how many has it been? Zero. I don't think one person has been let go, right? Because it's a termed simple cannabis offense, which I don't think anyone falls in that category prior to like a year or 2 years ago. So I don't know. It's a lot of
Yeah,
virtue signaling right now.
there's a lot of virtue signaling. It is
Yeah.
a lot of virtue signaling. My optimism, I guess, lies in like setting up the party. Like, it's obviously not what any of us want, but or I guess it's not the exact way we want it, but just kind of like setting it up for like a democratic play in 24, like we will legalize cannabis. Look at what we've been doing. Look at what all these. Da, 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 da. I think a lot of people will be like, "That's what you said last time."
Yeah, that's what you've been saying. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. I mean, and that's what's the shame. Like, of all the low-hanging fruit out there, of all the bills,
I
of
mean,
all the
goddamn.
issues, like that, if that right there doesn't show you that this two-party system, they just really, at the end of the day, are not doing what's best for the American people. They are working to push their agenda in any capacity, while, you know, dangling that carrot. And it's so frustrating. I mean, come
I,
on. Yes, go ahead. Yeah.
no, I was just gonna say I find it actually obscene, like totally obscene what the government is doing to cannabis, and not just like not legalizing it, but like they're totally championing the illicit market. and they're kind of like hiding behind this like big cannabis is big business. We all hate big business, don't we? Don't we? Don't we? And just like that is not what is happening here. You know, it's just like such an easy like denigration, like building the villain and build like, and they are killing so like small business, big business, and like they're making these promises. I hope they lead somewhere, but like right now, New York, California, Colorado, Nevada, like look around and look what's happening. It is obscene, and I don't think like um they're taken to task enough. The government is taken to task enough.
No, it's obscene. And, we live in this world of like being an ally, right? Like, I want to stand behind this cause and be an ally for it. And what's obscene to me is that, and this is kind of a missed opportunity because of this ally movement, is that if more people understood, and again, we got work to do as an industry because of the stigma that's been built up, all the misinformation that's been put out there due to prohibition. But if more people understood the value of this plant in so many capacities. I mean, climate change is an issue that, people champion behind to address, right?
Yeah, try
What
using hemp as a building material.
Right. I mean, plant hemp, right? There's no other plant in the biological ecosystem that takes in as much CO2 as hemp. Okay, check the box there. We've already touched on the medicinal and therapeutic benefits, and we're only learning more and more and more every day, right? Through peer-reviewed studies and others. And then, inflation. We're in an economic crisis right now. We need job growth. We need a new industry, a sector, and to be a global leader in this, right? I mean, we have experience at the state level. So that's why I say, if people understood, there'd be more people that would really rally around cannabis because it addresses so many of these relevant issues that we're discussing on a daily basis anyway.
Yeah, look, I think there is real interest in some parties to like keep pushing this anti-cannabis line. And if you talk to enough people, you're going to talk to some people that are anti-cannabis. And you're going to talk to people that you're surprised how anti-cannabis they are because like aren't you like an intellectually, thinking person? Like but no, there's all this misinformation and there's this real like denigration and I think it's difficult sometimes for talk about like evolving like I think it's difficult for some people to evolve their thoughts like but in the 80s it was terrible but in the 90s it was terrible but 5 years ago it was terrible, and also I will say I think the other thing is I think the way that we're getting trapped by these like old stigmas is really impinging kind of forward thinking and not just like in terms of like how we can move forward as a society but as you said like how pharma moves forward. I mean what is happening in America with like fentanyl and opiates and like it is like super big capital C crisis like why aren't we I mean and I know plenty of people are talking about the fact that like psychedelics and cannabis can help in terms of mental health but there's also it's crazy how many people are still like no 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 and it's crazy how many people are still dying from this it's just absurd so yeah I mean I think I've been like the past few months just like um really down on like the pharma industry and feeling like that is just like a big hurdle to get over in terms of like changing how people understand things because it's just yeah I think it's hard to get out from under that in terms of the politicians also understanding of the healthcare industry and also just like people in general.
Yeah. I mean, pharma is a big issue when it comes to getting cannabis legalization or even traction and momentum across the line at the federal level because of just the dollars that they have, right? And like you said, the influence and control that they have within our elected officials, it's it's obscene. That's another thing. And
Yeah.
um, yeah, I mean, I've even seen recently, like this week, the Wall Street Journal published basically like a propaganda hit piece on cannabis, associating it with lung cancer, where like I have the let me I gotta fact check this because it just didn't add up. There was like 50 participants and some of them were already predisposed. They were already smoking, so it made no sense. Here it is. The study only includes people already at high risk for lung cancer. A tiny sample size was conducted, only 56 participants, and 50 of the participants also smoked cigarettes. So,
What?
yeah, it's like, come on. Like,
Also, they're putting that out there. That's like crazy.
they published that. Yeah. And I don't even think
That's
it was an op-ed. It was like a legit article. Yeah. So they need to do better. I mean, we're
yeah,
people that don't even consume are smarter than this now because they know somebody who does consume, or they know someone who knows someone that does consume, and they're not seeing all these crazy, of course there are adverse effects. We've talked about it on this podcast. Cannabis hypermesia syndrome. I know people that have experienced that, right? But they're heavy users. You can't, I mean, it's an external substance, just like anything if you abuse it.
yeah,
um Schizophrenia, right? With young children whose brains are developing, right? Of course, those are real things. No one's encouraging kids to smoke cannabis or
yeah.
consume cannabis, but we
You know,
gotta draw the lines here.
so I don't mean to
Yeah, yeah.
interrupt you, but somebody made Giro Court from Papa and Barkley and from Christian Cannabis made this great point on one of my podcasts, like at the beginning of the year. And he's like, so many people are like, well, you can't have cannabis in your house because of little children, or like you have to make sure like the packaging needs to be like super, super child resistant. He's like, what's your alcohol cabinet look like when your kids are around? Just
Right.
totally open. I mean,
Yeah, you got a beer in the fridge, right? I
it's
mean,
ridiculous.
if that kid is tall enough to open and get a snack, they could probably grab your can of beer if it's not locked up. I mean,
And downing that is like could be death, whereas like downing a bag of gummies or like whatever is like not death. I'm not saying do it. I'm not saying you should be doing that, but like it's not
no.
death
Right. And the onus goes on the parents, I would say, right? Like
for
that did
sure.
happen in New Mexico when they first went online. I read a story in the Santa Fe Journal, uh where these kids like had a sleepover and they got into their parents' gummies and had to be admitted to the hospital. And yeah, don't leave your gummies out, right? Like, I mean, especially if there's going to be other kids in your home.
Yeah.
But that's a whole separate discussion, I
Yeah.
think. So
And I will say another thing. And speaking of kids, my daughter just came home and she's like, "Oh, I met somebody and I was talking to them and they're doing research on cannabis." And I was like, "Oh, my mom has a podcast." And she's like, "What are you studying?" And they're like, "The negative effects of cannabis." She's like, "Oh, my mom won't want to talk to you." But like, she did talk to her a little bit, and she was, and I think one of the, I don't know about everybody, but I think a lot of people are predisposed to be anti-cannabis if they've experienced somebody who is maybe not displaying great behavior or an addict in other ways also, and just like also cannabis is part of that story, but I think it's just like denigrated, and it shouldn't be. It doesn't deserve to be.
That is so true, Rena. Yes. I mean, if you have no prior experience with cannabis, at least I've seen this play out. People are like, I'm not touching that. What do you
Yeah,
mean? No, no, no.
yeah,
Like that's a drug. That's no, I
yeah,
don't do that. And then
yeah.
in fact, I had Beryl Solomon Jakowitz on. She's the founder of Poplar, and Ivy League school, like super like boom boom boom, about it. She was in the retail like side of retail fashion, I think. And she said she was taking SSRIs and like just popping them just because she was told, like, way back when. For years she was doing this, right? And I think she was pregnant, she mentioned, and she was like, why am I like, is there other options? And she said she was started looking, and cannabis kept popping up. And her first reaction was exactly that. It was like, no, I'm not. Are you kidding me? I'm not doing that. And then, but she kept inquiring. She asked a few friends, other people, even went to like trade shows and stuff, like really immersed herself and tried it and was like, oh, I've been lied to, you know like
Yeah,
this has all been a facade. So
yeah,
it takes a lot for people to get there, but the beautiful thing I think right now is a lot of people are taking ownership of their health. And they're looking at nootropics, they're looking at cannabis, psychedelics, all these things to kind of help with that hasn't been working previously, right, for them. And maybe, and it's beautiful because that's an entry point, for another alternative for them.
Yeah, look, on one hand, we have far to go, but on the other hand, I've never talked to more people about psychedelics. I mean, can you imagine like growing up as kids, like what that would have like I would have been like, no, no, that's never gonna happen. What are you crazy?
Right. My dad, I was visiting my parents in New Mexico and we saw CBS every Sunday. They watch CBS Sunday morning and they're talking about like cannabis infused meals. My dad called me today. He's like, did you see the segment? He's like, this is crazy. And then like ABC News is talking about psychedelics and how they're helping, with addiction and whatnot. I mean, this is hitting mainstream. There's no
Yeah.
stopping these forces. And it's just kind of cool to see it play out. The one kind of frustrating thing is, and we've talked about it, is just the movement at the federal level. I mean, they're kind of the only ones that are still
It's a
um
slow train.
slow train. I kind of always think the most negative on the federal government side, and I just feel like they're working on it, but they're working on how they can control it. Like
Yeah, I think that's
they're
right.
not saying too much, but they're like, how can we? Well, they're playing chess right now. Like, wait, hold on. Like, let's go the reschedule route, not the deschedule. And I hate to be negative, but it's kind of been put on me. I mean, I've kind of seen it play out too many times to where it's hard to be positive. You know.
It seems to me also they have a real dislike of the big business, and they really want to kind of like put a pin in that. Um, I don't know if that, I mean, look, I have very little faith in the government, so I don't think it's because they want social justice. It might be because they want to say that they want social justice. Um, but I also think that they are, yeah, like you said, like wanting to control it in the way that they want to control it, and they don't want any companies to get too big too fast. And I think maybe they're starting to see like these companies could be really big because damn, like there's a lot of crappy companies out there, but there's a few really amazing companies out there that like give them a little bit of like room to grow and they will grow. But like right now they're being, you know, killed with taxes and regulations and ever changing laws. And yeah, it's just like 2 years ago I was like, if you know anything about leading a company and you're in the cannabis space, you're going to be doing gangbusters. And now I'm like, you could know everything about running a company. You could have attached yourself or be somebody that knows a ton about growing cannabis and still not make it. Like totally not make it.
Right, right. Yeah. I mean, it's the wild, wild west out there. I mean, in states like Texas, I'm seeing it play out that way because of the lack of enforcement of regulation, right?
Right.
Because on the hemp side, the FDA has kind of just stepped out, and so you've got these bad actors and lab shopping and blah blah. I mean, it goes on and on. But you teed this up perfectly because I mean, I want to talk about these high performing, strong companies that are out there, but I feel like, just like every industry right now, we're weathering the storm. So
Yeah.
what are you seeing, at Seeking Alpha and with your podcast talking to some of these operators?
Yeah. Look, it's challenging times. I mean, I think that there's no way to sugarcoat it. It's like I said at the start, it's the rising interest rates. It's a crappy market. It's crappy regulations to be cannabis operator. It's all these onerous taxes. It's tough. I mean, we're seeing these like deals fall apart. We might see a big deal go through. I don't know, with the Cresco deal. It seems like that might go through. I think it seems like it will go through. That would be a huge deal. But other than that, we're seeing a lot of deals fall through because of like how regulations are playing out and also just like the limited cash that companies have. We had Julian Lin, he runs Cannabis Growth Investor from Seeking Alpha, and he was just on and he was talking about free cash flow is like the number one thing to look at in a company. If a company doesn't have free cash flow, they're not going to have enough money to withstand these crazy, terrible times. Right now we're seeing like tech stocks fall. And so I think some people are saying, well, maybe I should put my money in that. I never thought I was going to see Facebook go down so much. Maybe I should get in on that. And so I think some people are also not seeing like any change in cannabis and are getting, I think, scared by the prolonged like downturn in cannabis stocks. And I don't think we can blame them too much. It's dark. It's been dark, and if you had a lot of money invested and lost a lot of money, like it's tough. It's tough. It's
Right.
tough. It's tough. Um, and I do still think that the strong will survive, but I see that it's a tough path, and I think I keep recognizing that it keeps being tougher than I expect it to be. And just like watching the legalization play out and watching how much cash you need to survive, I think it's tough. And something else Julian was mentioning is kind of not just on the negative side, but like also not being able to take advantage of the positive side, which is, like the top companies would be able to do stock buybacks, but they don't have enough cash to make that deal because their cash is all wrapped up in debt or a deal or what have you. And so they can't even take advantage, the good ones can't even take advantage of being good. It's tough. It's tough. I obviously still think, I'm still invested in the market. I still think there's a lot of tailwinds and growth and profits to be made. But the share prices look terrible, and I don't know exactly when they're going to turn around. I don't think anybody does. Um, yeah, but I would say stay invested because it's hard to time the market, and
Right.
when it does start going up, that's going to be tough to do. But in general, yeah, it's tough, 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 tough times.
Hmm. Do you foresee, more M&A action happening within the current economic climate? I mean, because it seems like before, uh, it was like a race for the MSOs to kind of, see who is getting their footprint in the various states fast enough before momentum for federal legalization happens. So, I mean, have you seen that kind of change with these leading players?
I think so. I think we've seen it in the Verano Goodness Growth deal. What was the other one that fell through? I'm forgetting right now, but there was another deal that fell through. Talk about chapters. Like I think that was like it was like grab and expand. And like even True Leaf, who was like really focused on Florida, like with the harvest deal and expanding into Arizona. I asked Julian on that episode, do you think True Leaf regrets the harvest deal? And we're both invested in Trulieve. We're both big fans of the company, both big fans of Kim Rivers as CEO, both big fans of like their strategy. But, I don't know if he came right out and said, I think that they would regret it, but he basically like alluded to that. And he might have come right out and said it. I don't know. I can't remember. But like, look, and I don't know that harvest deal isn't good long term. I mean, we had Kim on like maybe last year and she was talking about like the deep work they're doing to integrate those two companies. And look, that was the biggest cannabis deal up until that point. And the fact that they have been able to integrate it is really kudos to them. The fact that they were able to like close that deal and work through it and all of that stuff, it really is big kudos to them. And, TBD, what's exactly how that's going to play out. But at the same time, I think any shareholder or investor would say, I bet they'd also like a lot of cash and see what they could do with a lot of cash and what they could do for shareholders. So do I think a lot of more deals are going to go through? It doesn't seem like it because the regulations are nasty. Like New
Mhm.
York was this big, like, shiny object that a lot of people wanted those licenses. And the regulations are killing people, killing companies right now. And I'm not sure that it's going to be a short time before that all gets figured out. So I don't know about deals. I don't know that we're going to see another big deal. I'd be really interested to see what happens with, I am really interested to see what happens with the Cresco Columbia Care deal. Like Diddy coming in, like I think a lot of people seem to feel like that solidifies that and that kind of everything I'm hearing that deal's going through. Not that I'm hearing all the chatter, but the chatter I hear that deal's going through. Um, yeah, what are your thoughts? I'm curious to hear what you think. Also,
I
sorry, I will say sorry, but just like the general market environment, I find it hard to believe that a big deal is going through near term.
Yeah. No, I agree with you on that. I think that we're kind of in a standstill right now. And I don't think, and I'm speaking overall in the market, not just cannabis sector, but I don't think we've reached the bottom yet. I think that there's still more pain to come. Um, so, and then I'm curious because I'm speaking more on the legislation side, right? So like we've kind of seen play out where because the climate is so bad right now, within the economy, even talks at the federal level of any type of movement for cannabis doesn't really seem to move the needle as much, you know.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and it goes back a lot because we talked about the lip service. I think that the industry and people that are in it know, if there's any efficacy or really truth behind what's being said, right? Because we've done our homework and we follow this daily. So I think once we see real talk, right, like we said, like I was talking about earlier, like if either party starts to really own this issue, that'll be an interesting time, because I think we will start to see some traction and movement. But the current administration, I mean, we see right through that at this point. And of course, with the market, it just kind of continues to suppress any type of growth that we can see.
Yeah. I would co-sign that, all of that. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, who have you been talking to? I mean, outside of the gentleman that you mentioned, I mean, or who are you got teed up here in the coming weeks?
It's a good question. I actually don't have a lot of people teed up. I'm interested to see kind of like what keeps happening as the weeks evolve. Um, I think right now I'm really interested. I spent the summer talking to a few California operators because I was there. Actually, one of my favorite things was going to see Lowell Farms grow operation in Salinas, which was a big treat for me. It was like the highlights of my podcasting career.
So my buddy bought Lowell Farms's pre-roll product when he
What
was in
did he think?
California.
I saw the first packages come out.
Oh
The
man. Okay. So
35, right?
shout out to Mike. Yeah, yeah. So he showed me it. We were doing a video call, and it's beautiful packaging. You got a magnetic like flap that like comes down, and you open that, and then there's an insert, like a box insert, and you pull that out, and basically there's two little openings where like little like pockets where you put stuff. So the first big pocket is where the joints go, and they're little miniature pre-rolls, and then on the top is matches. How cool is that?
I feel like I mean I am just saying this because I went there because only because I got to see it, but I'm not just saying it because I went there, you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah,
Like I
yeah.
got to see it, but I don't have to say anything positive if I didn't want to. But I feel like their attention to detail and packaging and like the coolness, but also the practical, like I feel like it's designed by smokers. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
I feel like they're really coming at it from like a smoker's perspective. The thin, like they're thin joint. I talked about this on my podcast. Like the 35s are like these thin, like the best way I would describe is like a lady cigarette. I just find
what are
that
they
to
called? The
be,
Slims? What are they called? Virginia
yeah,
Slims.
yeah.
Yeah.
I find it to be like the perfect, it's better than the mini like cones. I just find it to be a great smoke. It looks cooler, you know, it just does. And also it's like nice to share, even though it's slim, it's still, anyways, I really, really liked it. And I'm really, really interested to see what happens with that in the marketplace because I think it was a great idea. And to see them grow and produce at that scale is like it was so cool to see as somebody that's been following the industry for so long and consuming cannabis for so long to like be able to see it at that scale was really, really cool.
Yeah, I mean, you got a front row seat at that. That's got to be an
Yeah.
amazing experience. Yeah.
Yeah, and
And
and passing all these like farms on the way and like how you know they're growing produce and they're growing cannabis and just like it's a part of society, you know, like it was very cool and like I it makes me much more hopeful. Like it's kind of already there at scale and we're just going to keep getting bigger, hopefully in the right way and on a good path. But you know,
right.
I think we're there.
Yeah, I mean, the states are going to be the ones that are going to really push, I think, the federal government to move. We're already at 19
Yeah.
adult
Yeah.
use states, right?
Yeah.
Uh, when you were
Oh,
driving in, oh, go ahead.
no, no, you go ahead.
I was just curious, when you were driving in California, visiting those farms, could you smell the cannabis in the air, like being grown?
No,
No?
no, no.
Okay.
You could smell it when you got closer, but like you smell a lot of stuff.
Got you. Okay. I'm thinking like South Park, like Tegrity Farms, you're just,
To be honest, like I almost feel that like I smelled cannabis more like landing in Amsterdam than I smelled it like driving to the farms.
I found like a gram and a half when I was in Amsterdam on the ground. Like I was walking
Really,
after
that's
I,
funny.
and I was just like, oh, this is so common that it's a
The
beautiful
streets are
bud.
paved with weed.
Yeah, I put it in my pocket and I had it for later. It was great.
That's awesome. That's
Yeah.
awesome. Welcome. Welcome to Amsterdam. That's a perfect welcome.
Yeah, the Disneyland for adults is what I say it is.
Totally. Certain
Yeah.
kind of adult.
Well, what haven't we talked about, Rena? What what are we missing? What is top of mind for you now that we're what mid-November? Oh my gosh, and
Yeah,
entering December 2022. It's
I
crazy.
know. It's crazy. Well, I think kind of the end of your last question, the end of my answer would be I was talking to a bunch of executives specifically in California, but also more I went to the Benzinga Cannabis Conference also and was talking to a lot of executives there. And there's obviously a lot of great insight to be gleaned from executives, and there's definitely a great perspective, especially if you're honing in on one company. But I think where I'm interested right now in this day and yeah, you're back.
Sorry, I had to take my dog out, but you can continue talking. Someone's at the
It's okay.
door, but my wife's coming, so
Um,
we're good.
Okay, good. I didn't know if this meant like pause or just I'm gonna go out and come back.
Yeah.
I should have played it much. I should have played it much cooler.
It's all good. Now people are gonna know I don't edit these episodes, so it's all good.
Yeah.
Boom.
Um, what was I saying? What was I saying?
Benzinga
Yes. So I was
conference.
talking to a lot of
Yeah.
executives, and now I've been trying to talk to like more analysts. I also kind of I also find myself doing that a little bit. Like I'll talk to, these would be, and then I'll feel like I want something more. So that's what I'm trying to do now because I think it's hard for executives to say a lot. Um, in terms of I think that they don't know how certain things are going to play out. But I think it's edifying to talk to analysts and like parse out what's happening in these companies and is it still worth being invested in, who we should be invested. Like I don't know if you've talked about this, but and this was just the last episode, so I guess it's freshest in my mind. With Julian Lin, like one of the main stocks, which was a REIT that he was talking about was New Lake Capital, which is like basically like they own the grows and some retail operations for like the biggest MSOs and some smaller ones also.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but talking about that, that's a good way to like play the industry now as we wait for like the stronger operators to do better. Like NLCP pays a dividend, it has like a high yield, it's non-plant touching basically. So there's different like Alan Brockstein, who I'm sure everybody watching, listening knows, talks a lot about the ancillary players. So I think, I guess what I'm trying to focus on is ways to be invested in the space that feel responsible, that feel right. And I think there's ways to be invested in this space for the long term that way. But I think there's also ways to be invested for the short term that way. I guess depending on what your definition of short and long term are. But I think there's, a smaller time horizon to be played and then a longer time horizon. As the time horizon extends, you're going to start to see, I think, the top MSOs, the top operators really like the fundamentals are going to match what's going on in the share price, I hope. So I'm interested to talking to people that like crunch the numbers and can really explain like why that is. I would say that's what I'm most interested in right now. And also just like things like tax loss harvesting, like different ways to kind of like play the industry.
Yeah. I mean, that seems like the smart route right now. I mean, there's not a lot of movement and traction like we were talking about earlier. So, talking to the analysts, the people that are really looking and diving into the numbers, crunching them, and looking for additional opportunities, like you said. I mean, some of
Yeah.
the plant touching MSOs, might not be the best bet right now. So think about the ancillary companies, the others that are involved, the REITs, right? Um, that makes sense because it also helps diversify and expand your portfolio overall. There's a
Right.
lot of players in the cannabis industry. And so if you can, pull one lever here and then maybe pull another lever here, given the current climate, that's a good option.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Totes. Totes, totes.
Totes my goats. Well, Rena, I love catching up as always. And it was
Likewise.
just, a pleasure to have you on. We got to do it more frequently. I'm going to take onus on that. It's my bad. But now that I'm like settled in and I'm going to really try to record a lot more episodes before the baby arrives because I hear that you get a little busy with a
Take up your
newborn.
time. When's
So
the due date?
March, mid-March,
Nice.
March 9th. Yeah.
Nice. Nice.
So
Nice. Nice.
we'll see. Baby Theo is about to enter the world. Here we go.
Oh, he's got a name. That's a good name.
Yeah,
That's a
Theo
good
Carrillo.
name. Nice. I like it.
Yeah,
I like it. I like it. I like it.
thank
Well,
you.
Kevin, it's always good to catch up. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate you having me on. And good luck in the meantime. I hope to talk to you soon, but good luck with everything that's happening.
Awesome. Thank you so much. We'll do it again real soon, and good luck to you. And thank you all for listening.
Thank you all for
Bye.
listening. Bye, guys.